Hey everyone, today I'll be reviewing my newest MOC Executioner. This MOC took me about 3.5 hours to build, and I would like to say he's upwards of 400 pieces. For a quick size comparison, I'll put my Speed of Demon MOC right next to him. As you can see, Speed of Demon is a little bit taller, but there's really not that big of a height difference, especially if you're not counting Speed of Demon's arms in his overall height. And here's a ruler right up next to him. He's about 8 inches right there at those little tanks on his back. Now that the size comparison is over, we can get into the detailed review, starting with the legs. The leg design is very bulky, as you can tell, and these are actually some of my better built legs. They're very sturdy, and I like the overall design. Wherever there were pinholes that I couldn't really cover up, I just put a Lego just to block them, just because I don't really like having all of the different holes showing, and so that's why you see all those little Lego pieces. It's just because I wanted to cover up the holes right there. Now, I don't do that on the feet, though, because it can restrict the movement. If I put a Lego piece right there, it would restrict the foot movement just ever so slightly. I did what I do on a lot of my MOCs. I put those pulley wheel pieces on either side of the joint, the knee joint right there, just to cover up the ball joint and just to give some extra mechanical detailing. The back of the legs really aren't that complex looking at all. They're kind of just flat until you get up here to those little tube pieces right there. The leg design probably was the easiest thing in this build. They went up in a matter of probably 15 minutes. They definitely took me no time at all, considering most of the time legs take me potentially an hour. The arms were actually the last thing that I put together in this build, which is kind of odd because typically I build the legs last, but I just kind of decided to toss things up when I was building this MOC. I'll go ahead and take the guns away, and I'll show you those closer up later on in the review, but right now I don't want them to restrict and to block the image of the arms, potentially. And the arms are very bulky, as you can tell. One of the main problems with this MOC, with the arms, is the elbow. That wire right there just slightly restricts to where the elbow can't bend all the way. But that doesn't really matter. I think it still has enough movement in the elbow and the forearm to where it doesn't really matter that much. As you can see, his biceps are very, very big. I armored them very heavily, as you can tell. Now, another problem is this wire right here. It can slightly interfere with that orange wire right there also, but he still has enough range of motion to where he could be used in a stop motion, and if need be, I could always take the joint off and just stick it to the body if I needed to get a broader range of motion with the arm. But typically these assassins will be using their guns and not really fist fighting all that much. I really like the arm design. This is actually one of my favorite arms, despite the fact that the elbow is slightly limited. I really like the use of this Bionicle armor plate piece. That's such an easy piece to use because it's so big and it has so many different connection points, so it can be used very easily when MOC building. Around the back of the arms, you can see they're not very detailed and they're not very complex. I just used that Bionicle jet piece in orange that I got from Rotor to cover up just the back of the arm, kind of the tricep area. The arms did go together very easily. I probably built them in like 30 to 40 minutes, which is a pretty short build time for my typical arms. The body, unlike most of my other MOCs, does not use this preset shoulder piece right here. This is a very useful MOC building piece, but I decided to go completely custom, except for that tiny little preset piece right there that connects the legs. As you can see, the body is kind of is V-shaped a little bit. You can see a slant right there, which that was very hard to do without any big preset pieces, but I really like how it turned out. It worked out a lot better than I thought it would. As you can see, the back is not very detailed. I really like this Bionicle piece that I think I got from Maxilos. That's a very, very useful Bionicle guy if you're looking to MOC build. He has a lot of useful armor plates. Once again, I used that Bionicle armor plate on either side just to give some extra detail. Now, I did not cover that with a Lego piece like I probably should have. I just didn't want it to interfere with the arm at all in any way, so I just decided to leave those blank, which I don't think it looks really that bad at all, mainly because the arm is basically always covering up that spot right there, so you can't really see the exposed pinholes. I originally did not plan to have this Bionicle armor plate right here. Originally, this was just a cavity right here with no armor plate, and so he looked pretty much like this exactly, except there would have been a little bit of a deeper cavity right there. But I decided that I needed to put some sort of chest plate, and so this really kind of finished off the design, and it really makes him look a lot cooler in my opinion. I had to choose Hydraxon's head for one of these assassins because Hydraxon has to be one of my favorite Bionicle sets ever. He's actually one of the first Bionicles I ever got, and so I just had to use his head. I used another one of Rotor's shin armor plates right up here. I used 2 on the knees. I don't think I pointed that out. And I actually don't have a ton of those, so I also used those pieces sparingly, but I decided to use 3 on this MOC, just kind of to finish off the design. Another piece that I should point out that I used is this big chest plate piece on the back. That's another very useful Bionicle piece. As for his internal structure, it's basically just a mass of Technics making that V shape secure, so I guess I could take a few pieces off potentially just to show you what his endoskeleton looks like. With quite a few pieces removed, you can see the endoskeleton from the front and from the back. I didn't use just a ton of Technics, but as you can see, it is kind of a mess in there of just random pieces making this V shape possible. The back is really just a backpack, actually, that just sits and covers up all of those exposed Technic pieces, and so without that big structure, this really wouldn't look quite as good. This MOC really would not be the same without that big structure and all those different armor plates. This MOC is definitely one of my favorites now, mainly because of the V shape. I think that worked out pretty well. I always like building custom bodies rather than using the preset pieces. Now that he's put back together, we can move on to the guns. The guns were actually the very first thing that I built. I built them before I even had the idea of making this MOC, and so once I built him, I knew that these had to be his guns. These guns really don't have much to offer. They don't really have any groundbreaking designs. However, I do like how they look. I like how this armor plate kind of slopes into the barrel, and I really like the sight and the knife mounted on it. I think the knife is actually probably one of the most practical parts of this weapon. I think the knife is a very good idea. I haven't really come up with how this gun works exactly. It definitely shoots some sort of bolt. It doesn't shoot normal ammo. I think it would shoot more along the lines of a laser of some sort. I've had these guns on display like this, but actually this drum part faces outward, so I actually had them backwards. But now I'll put them back on the MOC so you can see them together one last time. Here he is one last time with his guns. He really is one of my favorite MOCs. He's a lot cooler than most of my 4.0 Reimagined MOCs, at least in my opinion. I hope the next assassin that I make will be even cooler than him, and he should be reviewed and posted next Friday. I only have 3 more assassins to build for this series. This is the very first one, and I hope he's actually not the coolest. I hope each one gets progressively cooler. I hope you'll like and subscribe and continue watching my reviews. As always, thanks for watching, and please check out some of my other videos.